The sun was sinking behind the quiet hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, when 12-year-old Kelechi trudged barefoot along the dusty road that led to his home. His white school shirt, which had once been bright, was now smudged with dirt, chalk, and the stubborn dust of the dry season. His friends had already taken the shortcut through the tall grass, laughing loudly, racing each other, and calling his name. But Kelechi didn't follow them. He never did. The longer path was his thinking place, a place where the world felt softer, where he could breathe, dream, and imagine a life bigger than the small village of Nwoko where nothing ever changed. He often pictured becoming a doctor, or maybe a teacher, or maybe someone important, someone who could bring comfort to others. But dreams like that had to live quietly in his mind, because even school fees were a struggle. He kicked a small stone as he walked, listening to the chirping crickets waking up for the evening. That was when he heard it, a sound so faint he almost thought he imagined it. Asofte, shakisobi. Kelechi stopped mid-step. His heart thumped once, twice. The road around him was empty. The wind rustled through the grass. A lizard darted across the path. Then he heard it again. A cry. He turned slowly and traced the sound to the foot of an old mango tree. A tree that had stood on that road longer than anyone could remember. And there, sitting on the dry ground, was an elderly woman. Her wrapper was dusty, her shoulders shaking, and her wrinkled hands trembled as she wiped her face. Kelechi felt a chill run through him. She looked so alone, so forgotten. Most people would walk past. Some would pretend they didn't see her. Others would be too afraid or too busy to care. But not Kelechi. Something in him refused to ignore someone in pain. He swallowed and stepped closer. "Ma," he called gently. "Are you okay?" The woman lifted her face. Her eyes were red and wet, like she had been crying for a long time. She tried to smile, but it broke apart before it could form. "My legs," she whispered. "They failed me. I fell down, and someone just stole my basket of fruits. Everything I picked today is gone." Kelechi stared, stunned. Who would steal from an old woman and leave her here, helpless, on the dusty road? His heart squeezed painfully in his chest. Without thinking twice, he dropped his schoolbooks on the ground and knelt beside her. "I'll help you," he said softly. "I'm here." Those 5 words came out naturally, like they were the only words possible. The old woman blinked at him, surprised by his kindness. "My son, thank you," she murmured. "Don't worry," Kelechi said, trying to sound older than his 12 years. "Let me help you stand. Slowly. Okay?" He offered his hand. Her fingers were cold and shaking as she held on to him. With gentle strength, Kelechi helped her rise to her feet. She winced, leaning heavily on him, and he steadied her with both hands. "Where is your home?" he asked. She nodded toward a cluster of small houses far ahead. "Over there, near the well." "Okay, I'll take you." And so they walked, Kelechi with his small frame supporting her, step by slow step. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the road. The air grew cooler. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked and women called their children home. As they walked, the elderly woman whispered, "People don't stop to help anymore." Kelechi looked up at her. "They should," he said simply. She smiled. A real one this time, warm and filled with something like hope. He didn't know it then, but that short walk would be the beginning of everything. The start of a story bigger than he could imagine. A story of kindness, courage, and destiny. Because sometimes, the smallest act, helping a crying old woman by the roadside, is enough to turn an ordinary boy into something extraordinary. A legend in the making. The old woman tried to stand, but her legs trembled like thin sticks struggling to hold up a heavy load. Kelechi's heart squeezed at the sight. She looked as though one stronger breeze could knock her over again. Without a second thought, he stepped forward and placed his arm around her waist. "It's okay, Ma. Lean on me," he said softly. She hesitated, almost embarrassed, but finally allowed him to support her. Her weight was light, too light, Kelechi noticed, the way someone who had been missing too many meals might feel. Step by step, they moved together down the quiet road. Her breath came in slow, shaky intervals, while Kelechi kept adjusting his pace so she wouldn't fall behind. Every few steps, she whispered, "I'm sorry, my son. I'm slowing you down." But he shook his head each time. "Don't worry, Ma. You're safe with me." The sky had deepened into purples and blues now, and the chirping of crickets grew louder. They approached the edge of the market square, a once bustling place now turning silent as traders packed up their goods. Kelechi glanced around desperately. Wooden tables were being folded. Sheds were being locked. Bags of pepper, beans, and corn were disappearing into wheelbarrows as tired traders hurried home before darkness settled fully. But the old woman's stolen basket of fruits? Nowhere. Kelechi bit his lip. He didn't want to fail her, not after she had already suffered so much. So he guided her to a wooden bench and gently helped her sit down. "Ma, rest here. I'll find your basket." She grabbed his wrist, her voice trembling. "No, my son. It's getting late. Go home. Your parents will worry." "My mother knows I'm on the long road," he said with a small smile. "And she knows I help people." Before she could protest further, he stepped away and started searching. First, he approached a vegetable seller folding her umbrella. "Auntie, did you see anyone running with a fruit basket?" She shook her head. "No, but I heard someone crying earlier." Then he asked a woman sweeping the front of her stall. Her answer was the same. Kelechi moved from stall to stall, asking, searching, hoping. His voice got softer each time, worry tightening his chest, but he refused to stop. He couldn't bear the thought of going back to the old woman empty-handed. After almost 10 minutes of searching, he stopped to catch his breath. The sky was nearly dark now. Lanterns were being lit. People were leaving. Maybe the thief had already escaped. But then, something small shifted behind a wooden kiosk. Kelechi narrowed his eyes. There was movement, like someone crouching. He stepped closer carefully, and the shape became clearer. A boy, no older than Kelechi, maybe even younger, sat hidden behind the kiosk. His clothes were torn, his feet bare, his face streaked with dirt. And in his arms, pressed tightly against his chest, the stolen basket. Kelechi's heart didn't jump in anger. It jumped in understanding. He approached slowly, his footsteps soft, not wanting to scare him. When he finally stood a few steps away, he said gently, "Why did you take it?" The boy flinched but didn't run. His eyes glistened, and his voice came out in a whisper so small it almost disappeared into the night air. I was hungry." Kelechi stared at him for a long moment. The boy's ribs were visible, his hands trembling. Not from fear, but from weakness. It reminded Kelechi of the old woman sitting alone on the road. Two people suffering for different reasons but caught in the same world of struggle. Slowly, Kelechi crouched down so their eyes were level. "You could have asked," he said softly. "People would have helped." The boy shook his head. "Nobody listens to boys like me." Kelechi sighed deeply, not out of anger but sadness. He gently reached forward and lifted the basket from the boy's thin arms. "Next time," he said, "just ask." The boy looked up, surprised, maybe expecting Kelechi to shout or punish him. But instead, he saw kindness. Real kindness. Kelechi stood up and turned back toward the old woman. When he reached her, her worried expression changed the moment she saw the basket. For the first time that evening, she smiled through her tears. "My son, thank you." And in that moment, Kelechi felt something deep and powerful settle in his chest. A feeling he couldn't yet name, but one day would understand. The world was heavy, but he was strong enough to carry part of it. And he would keep carrying it again and again. This was only the beginning. The walk to her home was slow, gentle, and strangely peaceful. The old woman leaned on Kelechi for support, and though his small frame carried her weight with effort, he didn't complain. The sky above them was now a deep blue blanket dotted with early stars, and the cool evening breeze brushed against their faces. Her house appeared at the far end of the village, a tiny round hut with a slanted roof. the kind Kelechi had seen since he was a child but never really paid attention to. A small clay pot sat outside, and a mat lay neatly rolled beside the doorway. The hut was old, but it was clean, cared for, and warm in a way that made Kelechi feel something like comfort. "We're here," she said softly, her voice tired but grateful. Kelechi led her to the door. She fumbled for a moment before saying, "My son, come inside. At least rest your feet." He hesitated. His mother always told him not to enter strangers' homes without reason. But this woman wasn't a stranger, not anymore. She was someone he had helped, someone who needed him. And more than anything, Kelechi didn't want her to feel alone tonight, so he nodded. "Okay, ma." The inside of her hut surprised him. It was small, yes, but it told stories. Old framed pictures hung on the mud walls. A young man laughing, a woman stirring a pot, a baby wrapped in a shawl. Handmade crafts, woven baskets, bead ornaments, and a carved wooden spoon decorated the shelves. A clay lantern sat in the corner, waiting to be lit. She struck a match, and the flame glowed warmly, throwing soft shadows across the room. Kelechi looked around in quiet awe. "Your home is beautiful." She smiled as she lowered herself onto a stool. "Thank you, my son. Everything here was made by my family." Kelechi's gaze drifted back to the pictures. The young man in most of them had a bright smile, the kind that made you want to smile back. The woman followed his eyes. "That's my son," she whispered. Kelechi turned, sensing a heaviness in her voice he hadn't noticed before. "He died many years ago," she continued, her fingers gripping the edge of her wrapper. "A sickness took him before help could reach us. He was only 17. Kelechi's heart tightened. I'm so sorry, ma." Her eyes filled with tears, but they didn't fall. Instead, she reached out and cupped his cheek gently, like a mother comforting a child, even though she was the one who needed comfort. "You remind me of him," she said. "The way you helped me today. That was how my son used to help others. Without fear. Without hesitation." Kelechi didn't know what to say. He felt something warm in his chest. Something that made him sit a little straighter. She motioned toward a wooden plate on the table. "Eat something. You look tired." "Oh, no, ma, I'm fine." "Please," she insisted, her eyebrows raised in that motherly way adults have when they won't accept a no. Kelechi smiled shyly and nodded. She brought him a small portion of food, yam and palm oil, simple but warm. As he ate, she watched him quietly, her eyes soft and filled with a kind of peace he didn't understand. "You eat like a child who works hard," she said with a chuckle. "My mother says I think too much for someone my age," Kelechi replied, grinning. The woman laughed, a gentle musical sound that made the small hut feel even warmer. When he finished eating, he stood and dusted his hands. "I should go. It's getting late." The woman nodded and slowly stood up with the help of her cane. Then, she reached into a wooden bowl and lifted something small and colorful. A bracelet handmade with tiny beads, woven into a delicate pattern of blue, gold, and black. She placed it gently into Kelechi's palm. "For protection," she said. He blinked, surprised. "Ma, I can't take this." "But you must," she insisted. Her voice softened, almost like a whisper carried by the wind. "It belonged to my son, and now, it belongs to the boy who brought peace to an old woman's heart." Kelechi stared at the bracelet, feeling its weight, light, yet meaningful. "For destiny," she added quietly. He didn't understand what she meant, not yet, but as he walked home through the starry night, the bracelet warm against his skin, he felt something shift inside him. Something new, something bigger than he could explain. The kind of feeling that only destiny brings. By sunrise, the village of Nwoko was already alive with chatter. The morning breeze carried voices from doorsteps, from cooking fires, from women sweeping their compounds and men preparing for the day's work. And almost every conversation mentioned one name, Kelechi. It started with one trader telling another what she saw the evening before. Then a passerby added details he thought he knew. and soon the whole village had shaped the story into something almost magical. "Did you hear about the boy who helped Mama Adan?" one woman asked near the well. "I heard he carried her all the way home," another replied dramatically. "No," a man said, shaking his head. "They said he fought off the thief himself." Children gathered in small groups, eyes wide with excitement.
Imagine.
Kelechi, our Kelechi, saving someone like a hero from the stories. Even the elders nodded in approval whenever his name came up. Adults who usually walked past him without noticing suddenly greeted him with warm smiles. Some touched his shoulder and said, "Well done, my son." Others stared as if seeing him for the first time, as if they had only now realized he wasn't just any child, he was different. When Kelechi stepped outside to fetch water, he froze at the dozens of eyes following him. Women paused in their sweeping. Men looked up from their benches. Even goats seemed to bleat in his direction. He walked faster, head down, wishing he could disappear. By the time he returned home, his mother was standing by the doorway with her arms crossed, but not in anger. Her eyes were soft, full of something deeper than pride. "Kelechi," she said, pulling him into a tight embrace. "Mama, you're squeezing me," he mumbled, his face pressed against her shoulder. She laughed through tears she didn't bother to hide. "Forgive me, but my son, you have no idea how my heart danced when I heard what you did." She pulled back and touched his cheek gently. "You have your father's heart." At those words, something warm fluttered inside Kelechi. His father had died years ago, when Kelechi was still too young to keep memories clearly. But he remembered stories. Stories of a man who never ignored anyone in need. A man who once saved a neighbor's child from drowning. A man who gave even when he had little. To be compared to him felt like a blessing. But something else stirred beneath the surface. Confusion, curiosity, an unshakable feeling that something bigger was happening. Because as the villagers praised him, they also whispered something else. Not loudly, not openly, but softly with glances over their shoulders. It was the name of the woman he had helped.
Mama Adane.
People spoke about her with a strange mix of respect and fear, as though she were more than just an elderly widow living alone at the edge of the village. "Do you think she chose him?" one woman whispered behind a stall. "Maybe she's testing him," another murmured. "Or maybe she knows something," an old man added, stroking his beard. "That woman, she has seen things." Kelechi didn't understand any of it. Chose? Testing? Know what? He simply thought she was a lonely old woman who needed help. He didn't know her past. He didn't know her secrets. He didn't know the weight of the history she carried. But the village did. They remembered who she used to be. Years ago, before tragedy struck, Mama Adan was a storyteller, a healer, and a keeper of forgotten traditions. Some said she possessed knowledge passed down from generations before the village was even built. Others whispered that she had once guided leaders, made prophecies, or seen things normal eyes could not see. Whether true or not, one thing was certain. She was no ordinary woman, and Kelechi helping her was no small thing. It was said quietly, almost like a warning, that destiny always circles back to those who show kindness to the right person. That evening, as Kelechi sat outside his house, turning the beaded bracelet she had given him between his fingers, he felt something strange. A quiet hum in the air, a whisper he could not catch, pull he couldn't explain. He looked up at the sky. The clouds looked the same. The village sounded the same. The world felt the same. But deep inside, something had shifted. Something unseen. Something ancient. Something powerful. A legend long forgotten had begun to stir. And Kelechi, without even realizing, had awakened it. The afternoon sun was warm but gentle, the kind that made shadows long and the air soft. Kelechi hurried down the familiar path leading to Mama Adan's hut. His heart beat with a mix of excitement and curiosity. Ever since he helped her, something inside him refused to sit still. It was as if the world had shifted, just slightly, opening a doorway he could not see but could somehow feel. When he reached her compound, he froze. Mama Adan was already standing outside, leaning on her cane, her wrapper tied neatly around her waist. She wasn't surprised to see him. In fact, she looked like she had been waiting for hours. "I've been expecting you," she said. Kelechi blinked. "Expecting me? How did you?" She chuckled softly, cutting him off. "My son, not all eyes see with only the body. Some see with the heart. And mine has been watching you for a long time." He didn't understand, but something in her tone made him follow quietly. She turned and walked into her hut, slower than the day before but with a strange firmness in her steps. Kelechi entered behind her. The lantern from yesterday still hung on the wall, and the pictures still smiled down at him. But today something felt different. There was anticipation in the air, a quiet intensity, as though the room itself was holding its breath. Mama Adan walked toward a large wooden chest in the corner, one he hadn't noticed the first time. It was carved with faded patterns and had iron handles shaped like coiled snakes. She knelt beside it and motioned for him to come closer. "Kelechi," she said, her voice low and steady, "what I'm about to show you is not for everyone, only for those chosen by life and by kindness." His heart thudded. She opened the chest. Inside were objects unlike anything Kelechi had ever seen. There were ancient-looking manuscripts bound with leather, old, fragile, and covered in symbols he didn't recognize. There were carvings of animals and people, each one detailed and worn smooth as though touched by many hands over many years. And then there was a necklace. It lay in the center of the chest, shining even in the dim light. The pendant was shaped like a small spiral with lines shooting out from it, almost like a rising sun. It didn't look ordinary. It looked alive. Kelechi stared, speechless. Mama Adan took a deep breath and began. "My son," she said. "I was once the keeper of our ancestors." Kelechi's eyes widened. "Keeper?" "Yes," she whispered. "The one who protects the history of our land. The knowledge passed down from those who came long before us. The stories, the warnings, the wisdom, all of it." She traced her finger along the edge of a manuscript. "It was my duty to guard these, to teach, to guide, to make sure our people never forgot who we were." Kelechi looked at her with newfound awe. "But when age weakened my body," she continued, her voice trembling slightly, "people forgot me, and forgot what I once guarded. They believed stories were just stories. They believed traditions were nothing but old words. And slowly, the past slipped away." Her eyes clouded with sadness, but then she lifted her chin. "You think your act was small," she said, "but it was a key." "A key?" Kelechi repeated. "Yes," she said, turning to him fully. "A key that opened a door inside your destiny. A heart like yours, one that rushes to help without fear or hesitation, can climb mountains even the strongest men cannot." Before he could speak, she reached into the chest and lifted the necklace. The pendant glowed faintly as though reacting to her touch. She stepped forward and gently placed it around his neck. The moment it touched his skin, he felt a faint warmth, like sunlight pouring into his chest. "Kelechi," she whispered, "from today, you will learn our history, the true history, not just of our village, but of our ancestors, our land, our people. You will learn what was forgotten. And one day," she paused, "one day, you will carry what I can no longer bear." Kelechi swallowed, overwhelmed. "But Ma, why me?" She smiled. "Because destiny is not found in strength or age," she said softly. "Destiny finds those with hearts willing to carry others." He didn't understand everything. Not the symbols, not the stories, not the weight of the necklace. But as he stood there in the warm glow of the lantern, feeling the pendant against his chest, he felt something awaken deep inside him. Something ancient, something powerful, something waiting, a spark. And Kelechi knew, his life had just changed forever. The days that followed felt different, brighter, fuller, and somehow more meaningful. School still started early, chores still waited at home, and the village still buzzed with daily life. But for Kelechi, every afternoon held a quiet promise. Because every day after school, without fail, He walked the familiar dusty path to Mama Adan's hut. And every day, she was waiting for him. Sometimes she sat outside beneath the mango tree, letting the breeze play with her wrapper. Sometimes she stood by her door with her cane. But always, she greeted him with a knowing smile, as though she had seen him coming long before he arrived. "Welcome, my son," she would say. "Are you ready to learn today?" And Kelechi always answered, "Yes, Ma." The teachings begin. Inside her hut, the air always carried the scent of old books, polished wood, and something warm, something like home. She would pull out one of the carved wooden stools, wave her hand for him to sit, and then open her chest of knowledge. From that box came ancient manuscripts, their leather bindings cracked but strong, wooden carvings, each shaped with symbols older than the village, small stones with markings, smooth from generations of hands, scrolls of forgotten proverbs, written in delicate ink. Each item had a story, each story had a lesson, and Mama Adan taught them with a voice that carried both wisdom and softness. She taught him about heroes long gone, warriors who fought not with violence, but with kindness, leaders who listened before speaking, healers who treated even those who wronged them. "Strength of heart is greater than strength of arms," she told him one afternoon. "The greatest heroes were those who lifted people, not those who defeated enemies." Kelechi nodded, absorbing every word. She taught him lessons of honor and courage, explaining how true strength was shown in moments no one else saw, returning what wasn't his, speaking the truth even when it was hard, helping someone with no expectation of praise. "Kelechi," she said, tapping her fingers lightly over her cane, "bravery is not loud. Many people who shout are cowards inside. Real courage whispers." She taught him symbols carved into ancient wood, circles that meant unity, spirals that represented destiny, triangles showing growth and balance. "Everything is connected," she explained. "Even the smallest choice spreads like ripples on water." And she taught him secrets kept by generations, warnings, promises, and truths about the land that most people had forgotten. But above all, she taught him this: compassion is the strongest power a human can hold. One day, she placed her wrinkled hand over his. "You lifted me when I was weak," she said softly. "But one day you will lift many, because kindness is a seed that grows into mountains." Kelechi felt warmth spread through his chest. He didn't always understand the depth of her words, but he understood the importance. A boy becoming something more. As days turned into weeks, Mama Adan noticed a change in him first. The way he listened, not just with his ears, but with his heart. The way he asked questions and pondered the answers. The way he carried the necklace she had given him like something sacred. But she wasn't the only one. The villagers noticed too. Kelechi no longer rushed through chores. He did them with intention. He helped children settle arguments without shouting. He greeted elders with a quiet respect beyond his years. He walked with a calmness that made people pause. Even the headmaster at school pulled him aside one day. "You've grown wiser, Kelechi," he said. "Older in a good way." Kelechi only smiled politely. He didn't feel older. He just felt responsible, as though something inside him had awakened and was guiding him forward. Children began to follow him, asking questions, seeking help with homework, wanting advice. Adults trusted him in ways they didn't trust most children. Elders observed him with silent approval. It wasn't just that he was learning history. He was becoming part of it. He was becoming something rare. A boy with the heart of a leader, the spirit of a guardian, and the courage of someone destined for more. Something powerful, yet gentle. Something ancient, yet new. He was becoming exactly who destiny needed him to be. The night started like any other. Quiet, peaceful, and full of the soft hum of crickets. But as the hours stretched, the sky darkened in a way that felt unnatural. Heavy clouds gathered above the village, swirling like angry spirits. The air grew colder. The wind sharpened. Then, without warning, the storm broke loose. Rain crashed down in thick sheets, pounding rooftops and flooding the dirt paths. Wind howled like a wild animal, bending trees until they snapped. Tin roofs tore loose, flying through the air like sharp leaves. Chickens scattered, goats bleated in terror, and people shouted from their huts. It was chaos. In the roar of the storm came a cry, loud, terrified, and echoing across the valley. "Help! Somebody help!" Kelechi shot up from his mat, heart pounding. His mother rushed to the doorway, clutching her wrapper as the wind pushed against the frame. The storm outside looked like the sky itself was falling. Before his mother could stop him, Kelechi was already running toward the sound. He splashed through muddy water, fighting against the wind. Lightning flashed across the sky, revealing the terrifying truth. The river had overflowed. The calm river that children fished from during the day had become a raging monster. Waves smashing against the banks, dragging branches and debris with it. And there, near the edge, clinging desperately to a fallen tree, were 3 children. Their screams were swallowed by the wind as water surged dangerously close to pulling them under. Villagers arrived one by one. Men with strong arms, women clutching lanterns, elders shouting instructions no one could follow. But no one dared go near the river. Not even the strongest men. The water was too wild, too deadly, too powerful. And then, Kelechi arrived. His clothes were soaked. His hair stuck to his forehead. His legs trembled from fear and cold. But his eyes were steady. A bright flash of lightning illuminated him for a moment, and the bracelet Mama Adan had given him glimmered with a strange light, like it recognized the danger. Kelechi didn't waste a second. "Bring ropes!" he shouted, louder than the storm. The adults stared at him, stunned. This was a child, how could he take charge? But something in his voice, something firm and fearless, made them obey. Ropes were gathered, old ropes, fishing ropes, even clotheslines. Kelechi grabbed them and started tying knots with quick, practiced hands. Mama Adan's lessons echoed in his mind. True strength is the courage to act when others freeze. "Tie these ropes to the trees," he commanded. "Hold them tight so they don't slip." Villagers hurried to follow his instructions. Even the strongest men looked to him for direction. Once the ropes were secured, Kelechi wrapped the last one around his waist. A woman gasped. A man grabbed his arm. "Kelechi, no. The river will take you too." But he shook them off gently. "They need help," he said. Those same simple words he lived by. Then he stepped into the raging waters. The current hit him like a hammer, almost knocking the breath out of him. The cold burned his skin. Mud swirled around his legs, trying to pull him under. The storm screamed in his ears, but he pushed forward. One step, another, then another. The children cried louder when they saw him coming. "Kelechi, please." He reached the first child, tied the rope around the boy's waist, and shouted, "Pull!" Villagers yanked the rope, dragging the boy safely to shore. Then Kelechi turned back. The second child. Then the third. Each rescue drained him more. His arms ached. His chest burned. His legs felt like they were made of stone. But he didn't stop until every child was safe. When he finally stumbled onto the muddy riverbank, collapsing to his knees, the villagers rushed around him, crying, hugging him, praising him. Kelechi saved them. He's a hero. He's a blessing to this land. But Kelechi, trembling and exhausted, simply whispered, "They needed help." And in the quiet that followed, those 3 words felt louder than the storm itself. The morning after the great storm felt strangely calm, as if the world had taken a long breath after a night of chaos. Birds chirped cautiously, the river settled into a soft murmur, and the village slowly returned to life. But Kelechi didn't notice any of it. He ran. His feet pounded the muddy ground as he raced toward Mama Adan's hut. He couldn't wait to tell her what had happened. The ropes, the river, the children he had saved. He knew she would understand the strange courage that had filled him. He wanted to see her eyes sparkle with pride. But as he drew closer, something inside him tightened. Mama Adan was already outside, sitting on her small wooden stool beneath the mango tree. She wasn't moving much. She wasn't humming like she usually did. She just sat there, her cane resting across her lap. Still, she was smiling. A soft, knowing smile. As if she had been expecting him. As if she already knew everything. Kelechi slowed to a walk and approached her carefully.
Mama,
I came to tell you. I know, my son, she said gently, her eyes crinkling. I knew you would rise. Her voice was warm, but faint. Too faint. Kelechi frowned. Something was wrong. Her breathing was slow and unsteady. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her wrapper. He stepped closer. Ma, are you okay? She looked up at him, really looked, and the sadness in her eyes made his throat tighten. My time is ending, Kelechi. The words hit him like a blow. No, he whispered immediately. No, Ma. You're fine. You just need rest. I'll get water. I'll call someone. She shook her head, a small, tired movement. Come here, my son. Kelechi knelt beside her, tears already gathering in his eyes. She took his hands in her own, her grip weak but full of love. You were my last task, she said softly. My final student. The last heart I needed to prepare before I left this world. Kelechi felt his chest tighten painfully. Don't talk like that, please. But she continued, stroking his knuckles with her thumb. The world needs hearts like yours. Brave hearts. Kind hearts. Hearts that lift others, even when they are tired. Her voice cracked slightly, but she kept speaking. Promise me, Kelechi. Promise me you will keep helping others, no matter what life brings. Tears spilled down his cheeks. I promise, he choked out. I promise, ma. She smiled again, peaceful, full of pride, full of something eternal. You are the legend our land has been waiting for, she whispered. You carry the light our ancestors once guarded. Never forget who you are. Her eyes softened, her breathing slowed, and then, like a candle flickering one last time before going still, she closed her eyes. Mama Adan's journey had ended. Kelechi couldn't speak. He couldn't breathe. He felt as if the world had shattered into pieces around him. He buried his face against her lap and cried. Cried in a way he had never cried before. His sobs filled the quiet morning air, mixing with the rustle of the leaves. But even as grief swallowed him whole, he didn't let go of her hand. He held it through his tears. He held it through the silence. He held it through the rising dawn. And when the first light of sunrise touched the land, Kelechi made another silent promise. He would honor her. He would carry her teachings. He would become the legend she believed he could be. And though her life had ended, her light, her legacy, burned brighter than ever inside him. The news of Mama Adan's passing spread through Nwoko village like wind sweeping through tall grass. Within hours, every household knew. Mothers paused their cooking. Fathers lowered their farming tools, and elders bowed their heads in silence. Even the children, who didn't fully understand death, felt the heaviness in the air. Mama Adan had been more than an old woman. She had been a story keeper, a healer, a guide, a part of the village's soul. So the people gathered, not out of duty, but out of love. They met under the ancient Irako tree at the center of the village, dressed in wrappers and shirts of deep colors. Lanterns hung from branches. The river's quiet murmur felt like it was also morning. Everyone waited for the ceremony to begin. But there was one thing no one argued about. Kelechi would speak. He stood in front of them, holding Mama Adan's walking cane in his trembling hands. His eyes were red from crying, but he stood tall, straighter than he ever had before. The elders sat around him in a circle, their eyes full of both sorrow and pride. Children crowded at the front, eager to hear what he would say. Adults murmured softly, "That boy, he was chosen." Kelechi took a slow, shaky breath. When he spoke, his voice wavered at first but quickly found its strength. "She taught me," he began, "that kindness is stronger than fear." The villagers went silent. "That helping one person," he continued, "can change many lives. She showed me that compassion is not weakness. It is courage." He looked at the faces watching him, men, women, elders, friends, and felt a warmth grow inside him. Mama Adan didn't just tell stories, he said. She lived them, and she taught me to live them too. A tear escaped, but he didn't wipe it. I will continue her work. I will help people the way she helped me. I will keep the history she protected. And I will carry her lessons wherever my life leads. When he finished, the world seemed to stand still. Then the chief elder rose slowly, leaning heavily on his staff. His voice was deep but gentle. Kelechi, he said, your heart is old, wiser than your years. You honor her today, and you honor our ancestors. Another elder nodded. He is becoming the kind of leader we pray for. One by one, adults approached Kelechi, placing a hand on his shoulder, bowing their heads slightly in respect. Children looked at him as if he were someone out of a folktale, someone larger than life. And in a way he was. The days that followed, everything changed after that day. Children began seeking him out, not just to play but to learn. They asked him questions about courage, about helping others, about the stories Mama Adan had passed down. They followed him like he carried a light they needed to see by. Adults listened to him too. They took his suggestions seriously. They trusted his instincts. They asked for his thoughts during village meetings. When arguments started, he helped calm them. When someone struggled, he was the first to lend a hand. When anyone felt alone, he sat with them until the feeling passed. Kelechi wasn't trying to be special. He was simply being who he had become. A guide, a protector, a reminder that goodness was powerful. The bracelet that never left him. Around his wrist, always, was the beaded bracelet Mama Adan had given him. The one she said was for protection and for destiny. Some villagers whispered that it glowed faintly at night. Some believed it carried the strength of ancestors. Others said the symbol on it was a mark of leadership. But Kelechi didn't wear it for any of that. He wore it because it held her memory, her love, her faith in him. And every time he looked at it, he whispered silently, "I'll keep my promise, Mama." And he did, because Kelechi was no longer just the boy who helped an old woman on the roadside. He had become something far greater, a legend born from kindness, a light in a world that desperately needed one. Years rolled by like gentle waves across the shores of life. The village of Nwoko changed with time. New houses rose, children grew, farms expanded, and paths became smoother. But even as the world around him shifted, Kelechi did not change who he was at his core. He grew taller, his shoulders broadening into the shape of a young man. He grew wiser, his words carrying a quiet calm that made even elders pause. He grew stronger, not just in body, but in spirit, heart, and purpose. But despite all these changes, the heart that had knelt beside a crying old woman under a mango tree remained the same. Because Kelechi never forgot Mama Adan. He never forgot her stories, her teachings, her final lesson, and he never forgot his promise. A young man of the people. Whenever someone cried, Kelechi stopped. Even if he was late for school, even if he was tired from farm work, even if rain poured down on him, he stopped. Whenever someone struggled, he helped. He carried heavy loads for grandmothers, fetched water for tired mothers, and built fences and roofs for families who couldn't do it alone. Whenever someone felt lost, whether it was a child confused after an argument or an adult unsure of a decision, he listened. Truly listened, the way Mama Adan had listened to him. And in everything he did, he wore the beaded bracelet on his wrist. Children believed it shined brighter whenever he helped someone. Adults believed it was a sign of destiny. Kelechi believed it was a reminder. Kindness builds legends. The traveler's question. One bright afternoon, when the sun warmed the earth and the scent of fresh yam filled the air, a traveler arrived in Nwoko. He carried a leather bag, a wide-brimmed hat, and the curious eyes of someone who had seen many places but still searched for something meaningful. He walked through the village and noticed something unusual. People nodded respectfully at a young man sweeping the pathway near the well. A group of children ran to him, clinging to his legs with laughter. An elder placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Even the goats wandered close to him as if drawn to his calm presence. The traveler blinked. "Who is that?" he asked a nearby villager. "The young man everyone respects so much?" The old villager glanced up, following the traveler's gaze. A proud smile slowly spread across his face, revealing deep wrinkles and warm memories. "That," he said, "is Kalechi, the boy who helped a crying old woman and became a legend." The traveler's eyebrows rose. "A legend?" "Oh yes," the villager replied. "A legend not because he fought battles or ruled lands, but because he carried a heart big enough to change our world." And around them, the village seemed to nod in agreement. A story that never stops. Kalechi's story did not fade with time. It became a lullaby for children falling asleep. A tale told around fires on quiet nights. A lesson whispered by teachers in classrooms. A memory honored by elders as they passed down traditions. His name was written into the history of Nwoko, into songs, murals, carvings, and hearts. People told his story to remind themselves that one small act of kindness can awaken hidden greatness, that courage often looks quiet, that heroes don't always carry swords. Sometimes they carry tears, compassion, and an old woman's bracelet. The true meaning of legacy. Many people believe legends come from power, strength, or fame. But Kalechi taught the world something different. Legends are born from kindness, from helping when no one is watching, from caring when the world is too busy, from choosing love over fear. And year after year, as the sun rose over Nwoko village, the people remembered him, not as the strongest, not as the richest, not as the most powerful, but as the boy whose kindness lit a spark that never went out. A spark that became a story that became a lesson that became a legend. His legend,